So I was reading Hugo Grotius's On the Right of War and Peace, as you do, and he has a really interesting turn of phrase in there. He says that people have a kind of double occupancy. That is, the collective jurisdiction of a people over a territory, which is usually in his day under the nominal control of a king, and the individual ownership of a segment of that in the form of private property. And this kind of double occupancy is something that you find everywhere and is a part of how we perceive ourselves as agents in the world and how things ought to be. And this double occupancy is really what multiculturalism and universal global liberalism is trying to undermine. Primarily, they want to, in fact, reduce all things to the individual occupancy and abolish the collective jurisdiction. And frankly, I just don't think that's acceptable. I think that actually people do have the sense of a collective jurisdiction. And everything that's called far right is what is appealing to that collective ownership. The feeling of possession, the sense of this is ours and not theirs. And this is one of those things where when you see the government saying, like, oh, yeah, we need to get diversity into the shires, a lot of English people get their backs up about this, and they don't really know why. And I think it is that sense of collective ownership, the sense of jurisdiction. This is ours. We have trained ourselves to respect it. Like when I was growing up, you were taught how to, obviously don't litter in the countryside, obviously. But also, okay, you can go anywhere you want, but you've got to make sure the gates are closed. You've got to make sure, like, how to climb over a sty. You've got to know how to, just get along in the countryside. And you're taught these things as a kid, or at least you were in school when I was in school. And it gave you a sense of collective ownership. And that's something that the modern liberal, and just any liberal really, can't really stand to understand and identify and accept is a real thing that is within us and within our assumptions about how the world ought to be. And this has been demonstrated by this Spanish town here, as the Daily Mail reports, banning Muslim festivals, which has provoked a furious outcry. But too bad. So we'll read through the Daily Mail's reporting here quickly. A Spanish town has become the first in the country to ban Muslims from using public facilities to celebrate religious Eid festivals just weeks after a nearby area was rocked by anti-migrant riots. Well, this is the sort of collective ego of the people saying, well, why don't we have jurisdiction over this area? When a foreign culture is allowed to practice its rituals in your land against the culture of the native people who thought of themselves as having the collective jurisdiction over the area, you get that kind of response. That's predictable. Again, this is what they all call far right, but they never try to even vaguely understand what's at the root of it. They just assume, oh my God, this is evil because it's talking about something that isn't itself just purely material, purely individualistic, purely categorizable and something you can numerate. This is a felt thing that's inside of people, but it's inside millions of people, and it's normal. It's completely normal for people to feel that they have a kind of possession and familiarity, that they've imprinted themselves, they've spread themselves on the world around them, as Hume would put it. It's completely normal for people to feel that way. And when that sense is taken away from them, when that is receding and when that is infringed upon, it's inevitable that they will say, we're not having this. And that's why you get anti-Muslim, anti-migrant riots. And that's why you get the banning of foreign cultural festivals religious festivals in this jurisdiction. This is a statement that this belongs to us collectively, and something that's not us, as in Muslim immigrants to Spain, they just don't get to make these kinds of decisions here, because this changes the nature of the possession of the land. Now, I mean, in the case of Spain, I'm shocked that they allow any Muslims in, really, because their history is so dominated by the concept of the Reconquista. For anyone who doesn't know, around the 8th century, I think it was, the Muslims conquered across North Africa, which was all Christian. And then they crossed the Straits of Gibraltar. Gibraltar comes from a Muslim word. use that as a base of operations to then begin conquering the Spanish, I don't know what you call it, like peninsula. And the Spanish history, Christian history, is dominated by and again, it took about 600 years, 700 years to drive the Muslims out of Spain. And so why they'd be like, okay, well, we're just going to give it back to the Muslims. If they just want to move here peacefully, I guess they can just move. Why would you do this? Like, I've been on holiday to Spain. All of the artwork, you go to like an old castle or something, you see artwork on the walls, and it's all a Spaniard killing a Muslim. It's like, right, okay, so why are they here? But anyway, so this was banned in Jamila, a town in the Murcia region with a population around 27,000, roughly 7.5% of whom come from mostly Muslim countries. Now that's an interesting turn of phrase, isn't it? They come from mostly Muslim countries, as in countries where these people, and again, each person comes from a group. There is no isolated, atomized, autonomous individual who is self-authoring and just pops out of the ether. No, everyone comes from a place governed by a people with a moral jurisdiction over it. And these people have countries of their own. They have countries in which they have Eid festivals and whatever, and they thought, oh, well, I'll just move to Spain, presumably for economic opportunities or whatever reason, and I'll carry on my festival there. It's like, no, why should you be able to do that? And this is one of those points that the sort of Remainer types love to make. So, you're complaining about the immigrants come over here and still acting like they did in their home countries, but you don't complain about the Brits in Spain. It's like, like opening English pubs and not learning Spanish. It's like, well, no, why would I? I don't live in Spain. But if the Spanish want to complain about that, and if the Spanish are like, you know what, we're just going to ban English pubs in Spain, it's their country. They're the ones with the jurisdiction over it. If they want to expel every Brit that's in Spain and tell them, right, you've got to go home or wherever, but you can't stay here, okay, it's their country. If the British expats decided to move to Spain and did not make themselves conformable to local life, or at least in some way that was pleasing to the Spanish, to have them there, and the Spanish are like, yeah, okay, I'm not actually up for this, well, that's on them. That's their problem. That's their fault. And I'm actually not very sympathetic to that. If the Spanish don't want you in their country, then you have to leave, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so obviously this was done by the right, the People's Party, which is the Conservative Party, and the Vox Party, which is hard right. The only thing I really disagree on with the Vox Party, as far as I'm aware, I'm not that familiar with them, but they want Gibraltar back, which obviously, you lost that in a war, bro. And it's been English for 300 years, so you ain't getting that back. But anyway, it prohibits public facilities such as sports halls and civic centres being used for religious, cultural, or social activities alien to our identity, unless officially organised by the local council. And that's the important thing. You notice, this is ours, our collective identity, and what they're actually saying there is that we have collectively the jurisdiction over this area. And so we are not going to allow Eid festivals here because we don't want them. It's literally that simple. It's not about rules, regulations, universal moral prescriptions, categorical imperatives. This is a deeply felt position. We don't want this here. And since we collectively have the jurisdiction over this area, we don't have to have this here. We can actually say, no, you're not having Muslim festivals in Spanish Christian lands. You're not doing that. And not only do we have the power to do it, we have the authority to do it. We have the right to do it. Because this is our land. We collectively possess it. You are a guest here, and you're trying to do something to which we object. Things that are alien to our identity. Completely agree. Now, the only real danger with this, I think, is that what this does is it forces you to kind of like enumerate your identity, and then you end up getting into the kind of Civnat realm of Spanish values. So in the same way we've got British values, as if people who don't hold modern liberal British values are actually not British. So millions of Brits whose ancestors can be traced back to Anglo-Saxon times or even further back aren't actually British. And those people who have literally just stepped off the boat and said the Pledge of Allegiance to a bunch of British values, they're more British than you, right? The only problem is here is that you abstract away from the real lived experience of the Spanish people to what is an enumerated set and a reduced set of characteristics. It kind of crystallizes it and detemporalizes it. It's no longer a lived thing. It's now an abstract, rational calculus, a set of axioms upon which Spanish culture is then dominated into the future. This is the problem with like treaties and constitutions. They don't actually change as the times change, as the people change. They're not actually living documents. And Roger Scruton had a great turn of phrase. It was like, look, they kind of lay like a dead hand on the civilization, preventing it from changing with the times and as is necessary. That's the only real danger that comes out of that. It's not insurmountable or anything like that, but it does run the risk of turning your culture into kind of a pastiche, frankly. But that's only if you engage with the dialectic, really. You can just say, well, look, this is alien to our identity, and we're not even going to explain ourselves. Don't explain yourselves to my Spanish friends. Just do what you want. If you don't like something, just ban it. Just prevent it. If you're not happy with Eid festivals being held in your town and city, just ban them. They don't have a right to it. This is not their land. They're guests in your land, and while they remain guests, you get to say what the rules are. And if you say the rules are no Eid festivals, they can find a country that does permit Eid festivals. So you can see that this is something that they've felt very strongly about. But the question is, what do these people think that they are doing? What do they think they're doing by celebrating Eid in Spain? Now, the point is probably something more than merely following their religion. They probably see Spain as a kind of ancestral Muslim land because it was conquered however many hundreds of years ago and then reconquered by the Christians. And so you've got to ask yourself, is this we're just following our religion, bro? Anyway, you can counterpose this with Rachel Reeves with a hair covering as she goes to meet members of the Pakistani community in her constituency. Who holds the jurisdiction here? Who is the one determining culturally what people are dominant in this land? I mean, it would be appropriate for her, were she visiting a Muslim country, to cover her hair, perhaps, when meeting whoever. When in Rome, you do as the Romans do. That's been a long-standing British dictum, to make sure that you are not being offensive to the host culture. But why are they able to set up their own little enclave and claim the collective jurisdiction over areas of Britain? This is the problem that multiculturalism forces upon us. Multiculturalism says, no, what we're going to do is bring in new people and shatter the kind of collective jurisdiction that we always thought that we had over our own country. So now we've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer culturally subservient to a foreign people in her own land. Well, this is just not acceptable. This is offensive on a level that I think many people don't really have the ability to articulate, at least not in the way that I'm doing now, but they feel in their gut that they can feel that there's something wrong with this. And they're right to feel that there's something wrong with this, because there is something wrong. We are seeing the domination of another culture and another people over areas of our country, over areas that we ought to have ultimate jurisdiction. Again, these people are guests in our country and not the other way around. And yet, Rachel Reeves is acting like she's a guest in theirs. This is not an acceptable state of affairs. And this is what's causing the far right to come out in force. This is why all of this is happening. This feeling of loss, this feeling, I'm just going to pause this so it's not so distracting. This feeling of loss is real. This is something that is being lost. And this is what the Spanish are reacting to, and rightly so. They are right to enforce their boundaries and say, no, the guests follow the rules of the host, not the other way around. And we in Britain should be really learning from this. Of course, we're a million miles away from anything politically actionable acting in this sort of way, but this is the right thing to do. It's not persecuting the migrant and minority populations. What it's saying is, these are the rules, and you have a choice. You follow them, or you leave.